Hello and welcome to the Heckscube set review, brought to you by me, Victor. Today we're going to be taking a look at all of the white cards from Heckscube. Now, for those who aren't aware, Heckscube is a recent Hellscube project where they really amped up the power level. They looked at some of the older sets like Homelands, Legends, Portal, and they thought, you know what? We could go a bit bigger, and I think you'll see that in some of the ratings that I give some of the cards. You can't just have a 1-1 for 1 and expect it to be stellar anymore. Um, and there's a lot of interesting mechanics. Again, it's nothing too complicated for the most part. They tried to make it on the easier side to understand, but that doesn't mean it won't be a fun draft environment. It's got enough cards in here that you can draft at 4 players. You can use Wizard's new Pick 2, and that will give you a good draft environment. Alternatively, you can just play it as sealed, grab 6 packs for you, 6 packs for a buddy, and then just go ham. So without further ado, let's take a look at the first card here. We've got Chinese Finger Trap. Now this is 1 white mana for a sorcery. Permanently bans 2 creatures that share a controller. Now I know I said, 30 seconds ago that this set is full of easy cards. And this card is really no exception here. I mean, you just banned something forever. What more can be said about that, really? So I've given it a C+. I think this is a card that you're usually going to want to put into your decks. It's got a lot of neat applications that you can use for it, but it's never going to be the shining jewel of your deck. Next up, we've got Duck. It's 1 white mana for a creature bird. It's a 1-1. It has flying, and then it's got the ability word Quack. For a white mana, you can have Duck enter. Now, you might be wondering, what does it mean for Duck to enter? And it just means if you had any enter the battlefield effects, it would trigger them. I've given Duck here a C-, and I think this is a really good example about the power level that's increased. Back in maybe original Portal, back in Homelands, maybe even in Alpha, you would see a 1 mana 1-1 with flying and upside, and think, wow, this is a first pick, but no. It can sometimes make the cut. Sometimes you just really need a cheap, evasive creature, but it's never going to be stellar. Some things about Duck, though, it's got a really good little set symbol. Next up, we've got House of Tutors, 1 white mana for a sorcery. Search your library for a sorcery, summon, and any card. Reveal them, shuffle your deck, and your opponent chooses 2 to put on the bottom. Put the rest on top. And I've given this a B-. I think this is usually going to get you your 3rd or sometimes 2nd best card. Now, it's obviously takes a turn. You don't get it right away, you've got to draw the card. But I think the format is still going to be slow enough, and there are some cards that you'll see later on that are just absolute bombs compared to the rest of the format, that you're certainly going to be happy to spend the card, spend the mana, to get one of your best cards. Obviously, the fact that 2 of the cards are going to go onto the bottom of your library means you won't get to see them, but say you have 2 busted creatures and a busted sorcery, which is going to be pretty run-of-the-mill for this format, you're going to get, well, your 2nd best creature. Next up, we've got Kong Ming's Trap. It's a sorcery for 1 white mana, and it has play after you're attacked, before you declare blockers. Deal 2 damage to any 1 attacking creature. So it kind of is an instant if you've seen any of that effect before. You can play it on your opponent's turn. And this just kills about half the cards in the format alone. A little over half of the cards naturally have 1 or 2 toughness. You can see right away why this is so good. It can get a lot of the 3-drops and even a few of the 4-drops that your opponents care about. You can even then block after. Say they attack in with like a 3-3, and you've got a 1-3. They attack, you play Kong Ming's Trap, you deal 2 damage, and now you can still kill off the 3-3 with your 1-3. So, A-, this is a really good removal spell, and you'll see a lot of the removal spells have been graded pretty highly in this format. Next up, Legacy of the Planeswalkers, a 1 white mana sorcery. Any 1 creature gets +2/+2 and gains Planeswalk until the end of the turn. This is the first split grade that I've given, because it really depends on if your opponent has planes or not. If you can make one of your creatures unblockable for a turn, a lot of the time that will give you the final push that you need. You'll be able to swing in with your 3-3, give it +2/+2, make your opponent who has planes unable to block it, 5 damage out of nowhere. There's a lot of board stalls in this format, so having a way to push through at the end is really good. On the flip side, if your opponent doesn't have planes, I've given it a C. It can still help get a good attack in near the end, but it's just not going to be the same game-winning play that it would be when your opponent does have planes. Next up, Lurking Daystalker. It's a 1/1 creature Daystalker for 1 white mana. Whenever Lurking Daystalker blocks, it gets +0/+2 until end of turn. B+. This isn't really a 1 mana 1/1, it's more of a 1 mana 1/3, and it's really good on defense. White is really good at waiting the game out until eventually it can play some of its haymakers. You'll see a few really good 5-6 mana creatures later on. So a card like this, it's just able to block your opponent's creatures that have 2 power, which again is a lot of them, especially early on in the game. Next up, Regular Lions. 1 white mana for a 1/1 creature cat. D+. Sometimes you just need a 1 mana 1/1. Not often, preferably not, but it's better than playing an extra color. Romeo and Juliet. A sorcery for 1 white mana. Choose any 2 creatures controlled by 2 different players. Whenever one of the chosen creatures is put into its owner's discard pile from play, do the same to the other of these creatures. I've given this a B-. I think it could get up to a B in a few decks. The thing with this card is you're going to play it on one of your own creatures, and then one of your opponent's creatures, and then kind of dare your opponent to kill your big creature. Because when they kill yours, theirs will automatically get killed as well. The issue, of course, is if you play it on one of your creatures and one of your opponent's creatures, now it's not nearly as good if you're the one to be proactive, if you're the one to kill your opponent's creature. So you've got to bear that in mind when you're trying to find attacks. I think this card will be one of the more skill-testing cards of the set. Just the way of knowing when to play it, on what creatures to play it. I'm not confident on B-. Like I said, it could be up to a B. It might even be down to a C somewhere. But I think B- is a good starting spot. Next up, Absolute Cinema. 1 and a white for a sorcery. All creatures gain protection from black until end of turn. Another split rating. This really depends on if your opponent is playing black or not. If they're playing a lot of black, Well, suddenly this is a 2-mana sorcery, your creatures can't be blocked. At the end of the game, that'll push through the last bit of damage that you really need. On the other hand, if your opponent has no black creatures, this is 2 mana, do nothing. Note that this is symmetrical, so if you've got any black creatures of your own, your opponent, their creatures will gain protection. But I don't think you're going to be in a situation very often where you're playing white-black and your opponent is also playing black. In short, start this card on the sideboard, and then as soon as your opponent plays a swamp, put it into the main deck for the next game. Next up, Arid Mesa Falcon. 1 and a white for a 1/1 creature bird. It has flying, and it has pay 1 life and sacrifice a land. This creature gets +0/+1 until end of turn. I've given it a D+. I think I might even be generous here. We saw that white gets a 1-mana 1/1 with flying for a single white mana, and the upside on this just isn't that much. Sure, sometimes late in the game you've got a bunch of lands and you can justify doing a big block, but it's only once. It doesn't even stick around permanently. I think this card, if it put a counter, it might have been up to like a C, but as it is, it's just something that you'll play when you really need another creature. Next up, Broken Clockwolf. It's a 2 mana. It costs hybrid 1 white and white for a summon wolf. It has phasing, and it's a 3/3. Now, phasing, this is one of my favorite mechanics. I just think it heaps with flavor. It means that the creature is only around every other turn. Think of it like some sort of joint custody agreement. But on the turns that you do have it, it's a 3/3. And that's really good stats for a 2-drop. You won't be able to attack with it on your turn 3. It will phase out. But then on your turn 4, you've got your 3/3 back. I think this is a really solid card. It's one that I'm happy to pick up early, especially because you only technically need 1 white mana to play it, but flavor-wise, you should try and play it for white-white. Next up, we've got Brown Polar Bear. It's a summon snow bears, 1 and a white for a 2/2. Grizzly bears, we all know it, we all love it. It's still a good card. It's a lot better than the 1-mana 1/1s, just because a 2/2 will actually start doing stuff. It dies to most of the same effects as the 1/1, but it can start killing stuff faster. And you'll see a few more bears come up throughout. I don't think there are any more in white, but we'll see. But just throughout the other colors, and they're all right around the same. Celestial Daystalker. It's white for a creature Daystalker. If Celestial Daystalker attacks and isn't blocked, your opponent may draw a card. But it's a 4/2. I've given this an A-. I think this is really good on offense. I know I said earlier that white has a lot of cards that want to drag out the game, but that doesn't mean it can't try and get the game over with, especially if it's paired with some of the other aggressive colors, namely red and black. And just like the best red and black cards, they all give a downside. In this one, if it attacks and isn't blocked, your opponent draws a card. However, this is 2 mana for a 5-turn clock. If you can attack with this just a few times, and again there's a lot of ways to give it evasion or to have other creatures with evasion, you're going to be able to kill your opponent before they know what's going on. If your deck is more of a controlling deck, this is still a great card. You just use it as a blocker, and now it can trade for their 4 or 5 mana plays. Even if this was a 4/2 with a 4/2 wall, for example, this would still be a good card. But as it is, it's just so much more. Evil Corrupt Court Official. 1 and a white for a 3/1 When it comes into play, your opponent draws a card. Ignore this effect if your opponent has 7 cards in hand. B-, it's a 3-1 for 2, which is on the upper end, but again, having 1 toughness is a bit of a liability. And making your opponent draw a card, it's not great, but if you can play this turn 2 when you're on the play, your opponent might have 7 cards in their hand already. If they went turn 1, just play a land and pass, then suddenly this is just a 2-mana 3-1, and it's pretty good at that rate. Empty City, not actually a ruse. It's 1 and a white, sorcery. All your creatures go to the Bahamas. Draw a card. This card just isn't that good. It doesn't do anything effective. If it had flash, if it's one of those instants I mentioned earlier, then this card would get so much better, because you could play it in response to a removal spell, but as is, it's mainly a 2-mana cantrip. Just not really worth your while. I would be not pleased if this card ever made it into my deck. Long, long, long sliver. 1 and a white for a 1/3. C+. It's just a body. It's pretty good at being defensive. 3 toughness blocks a lot of the cheaper creatures. But it's not really a card you should go out of your way to find. Passed the Civil Service Exam. 1 and a white for a sorcery. Remove target creature with 3 or more lines of rules text from the game. That creature's controller creates a 1/1 white bureaucrat token with horsemanship. So aside from having great flavor, I really love this card flavor-wise. Mechanically, it's just alright. There are certainly creatures where you would be happy to trade the 2 mana for giving them the 1/1, but the creature is a real cost. It's not like the creature won't do anything. 1 mana 1/1s are already playable. This one has horsemanship, which, despite what you might have heard about this set, isn't nearly as prevalent as you might expect. But it's still, sometimes you just need to get rid of their big thing. Solidly playable, but not great. Polo. You should start running. Suspend 2, 1 and a white for a 3/3. This is also a creature bird. And this is very similar to the Clockwolf we saw earlier. You play it turn 2, or you suspend it rather. Turn 3, it doesn't do anything. Turn 4, it comes in, and now it's a 3/3 with haste. Again, suspend, it's one of the rarer mechanics that gives the creature haste when it unsuspends itself. So it's a tiny bit better than the Clockwolf, but not ridiculously so. It's certainly worse later in the game as a top deck, because at least the Clockwolf would be able to block a creature. But solid card. Pure Court Official. 1 and a white for a 1/1. When it comes into play, you choose the top card of your deck and put it into your hand. I really like cards that give you this choice. You get to choose any card from among the top card of your deck. And it's a 2-mana 1/1, but it replaces itself. B+, a 1/1 on its own isn't worth a lot, but making it cantrip just means that you've just got an extra body clogging up the field. Ala Borealis Trooper. 2 and a white for a 2/3 creature soldier. If non-creature damage would be dealt, it is instead dealt by a source named the Northern Lights. The Northern Lights are located in the kitchen zone. No, you may not see it. Ever since Wizards got rid of the ante, they've been kind of hesitant to bring in new zones, but I really like the kitchen zone here. The creature itself I've given a B-. It's not stellar. The ability is more flavor text most of the time, But just being a 3 mana 2/3 means it can do pretty well in combat. So I would never be unhappy to pick this card up, and it'll always make my deck if I'm playing white. Buying the Dilu Horse. 2 and a white for a sorcery. Gain control of target creature an opponent controls. Its controller draws a card and adds colorless mana equal to its casting cost at the start of their next main phase. The flavor text is a bit erroneous just for mechanics-wise. No price is too high. I think this price is usually too high. Your opponent not only replenishes the card, but they also get the mana back. However, this is really good in the late game. You're not going to want to be using it on their 2-drops or their 3-drops, but if you can use it on a 5 or a 6-drop, sure, they're going to get to draw a card, but it might be a land, and it almost certainly will be a card that's less expensive and has less of a board presence. So I'll usually end up playing this in my deck, but it's not a card that I think you should be searching out. Domesticated Shadow. 2 and a white for a 2/1 creature Daystalker with Horsemanship. Again, as I mentioned, Horsemanship, it appears on a handful of cards. It's about 20 cards total throughout the set, of which about 9 of them are actual creatures, and the rest are sorceries that give horsemanship to your creatures, or, like the card we just saw, it gives your opponent a creature with horsemanship, or creatures that make creatures with horsemanship, etc. So this is most of the time 3 mana 2/1 that can't be blocked. Which, again, it's perfectly solid. It's a way to get damage through any board stalls. Oversold Fletcher. 2 and a white for a 2/3 creature human advisor. Tapped creatures you control don't count as tapped for spell and abilities your opponents control. I've given this an A-. This might be controversial, but at the minimum it's a 3 mana 2/3, which we already saw was playable. And then this line of rules text actually hoses a fair number of cards, especially there's some blue cards that care about tapped creatures, all of the arrows. There's probably 100,000 cards that this is good against. As a whole, though, it's not like a bomb, but it's still just a really good card. It's on rate with a relevant ability. And I think this card, and a few we'll see, is really representative of how much the power level has increased, but not necessarily in ways that are obvious at the start. Reclaiming 1 arrow. Well, look at this. We've just found a card that's Oversold Fletcher is good against. Sorcery, 1 white. Destroy a tapped creature of your choice. B+, solid removal spell. You can usually hit one of their good creatures. The key is that the creature will have attacked first, but a removal spell that can hit any of their creatures as long as it meets this criteria is still pretty good. Returning 100,000 arrows. 2 and a white for a sorcery. For each card in your opponent's hand, tap a creature they have in play. The interesting thing about this card is your opponent will have more creatures as the game progresses, so you'll want to tap more creatures. But they will also have fewer cards in hand because they will have played it all. So you've really got to find the optimal turn to play this, tap 2 of their creatures, and then get your attacks in. The creatures will untap on their next turn, so you really want this to be a sort of alpha strike right at the end. Or the middle. I've given it a C+. It might be a bit high. I think we'd have to play a bit more to see just how often you'll be able to get your big swing in. I could see it going down a bit. I don't think it can really go up. But, as of right now, decent. Unmanned Horse. 2 and a white for a 2/2. Unmanned horse can intercept as though it had horsemanship. So it can't attack with horsemanship. It can only block. I've given it a C+, mainly because it's a 3-mana 2/2. It's a gray ogre. It's still kind of playable. I mean, we've seen the grizzly bears, the polar bears, a few cards ago. And this card, sure, it can sometimes intercept creatures with horsemanship, but like I said, there's just not that many of them going around, so the ability isn't going to matter as much as you think it should. Daystalker Engine. Creature Daystalker, another one. 2 white for a star 3. Play with your hand revealed. Daystalker Engine has power equal to the number of creature cards in your hand. This is a card that I really wish was good, but by the time you play this, chances are it's going to be a 4-mana 1/3, maybe a 2/3. Add that to the fact that your opponent now gets to see what's in your hand, all of your surprises are gone, and it's an overcosted creature with downside. So unfortunately, I've given this a D. I wouldn't be happy if it ended up in my deck. The other thing is that even if you do play it and you've got 3 or 4 creatures in your hand, you're going to keep playing creatures out. Anyway, Defeat. 3 and a white, sorcery. Take any one creature card from play and put that creature into graveyard. Unconditional removal. You pick any creature, it dies. That's an A in my books. 4 mana is about the point where you start seeing this sort of unconditional removal. So if I were to see this card 2nd or 3rd, I'd take it as a sign that white's probably open. Every Portal set had Armageddon in it BTW. 3 and a white, sorcery, destroy all lands. This includes your lands. This is a funny card. You might think, well, it's symmetric, so I can break it. And some of the time you would be right. The key is that you need to be ahead on board with all of your creatures. I don't know how often that's going to be the case, especially not on turn 4. However, there is a card later on, we'll see in a different set review, where having no lands is an upside. So if you've got that specific combo, every Portal set had Armageddon in it BTW, can be a really fun synergistic card. Otherwise, you need a really good board presence, which I don't think you will often find. But this is one of the cards that I want to see work the most. I love Armageddons. Blowing up everybody's lands, even my own, is so much fun. Great Wall of China. 2 white. It's not a creature, it's a sorcery. Play Great Wall of China only after you're attacked, before you declare blockers. All your creatures have 8 shield until the end of the turn. I can't quite make out the flavor text, but I'm sure you can read it if you want. I've given this a B. I think a lot of the times your opponent is going to try to make an alpha attack, or an alpha strike, and you'll be able to play this card out of nowhere, save all of your creatures, make a few really advantageous blocks. If your opponent is more of a controlling deck, this card will get a bit worse. So I could see siding out in this card in some matchups, but I think as a whole, it's just going to offer you a lot of protection against some of your opponent's creatures, especially the ones in black and in red, which are overstated but have some pretty big downsides. A lot of the times, if you can survive one of those hits, you'll be in a really good spot. Pacifying the Dilu Horse. 3 and a white for a sorcery. Any one creature can't attack or intercept. This effect notably doesn't end. It will stay unable to attack or intercept for the rest of the game, or at least until it gets put into a graveyard and returned or anything like that. So A-. Again, a really good 4-mana removal spell. There are a few cases where if your opponent has a creature with a good ability, they'll still be able to keep using the ability. But those creatures aren't as common, and also it's still going to get rid of their ability to attack and intercept, which on its own is really good. Phyrexian Deflector, 3 and a white for a 5/5 creature Phyrexian Horror. Any damage that would be dealt to Phyrexian Deflector is instead doubled and redirected to you or another creature you control of your choice. I'm really interested to see what Phyrexian is. I haven't heard of this creature type before. I hope it'll be explored soon. But the card itself, I think it's pretty good. It's a 4-mana 5/5 that kind of has protection. Sure, you're going to start having to give up some of your other creatures, or even your own life. But if you're in a very aggressive deck, I keep coming back to red and black. They have a lot of this style of card. I think that's going to be one of the better decks. You're just going to play an overstat at 3-drop with downside, an overstat at 4-drop like this Phyrexian Deflector, and then hope to kill your opponent before all the downsides catch up. So I've given this an A- for any decks that can make good use of it, or a B- if you're not an aggressive deck. Sundial Wolf. It's a 3/3 creature wolf for 1 white and another 1 white. So it's a 4-mana 3/3. I've given this a B-. You'll usually want to have 4-mana 3/3s in most of your decks, especially in more mid-range or control-y decks. In an aggressive deck, it's not going to be nearly as effective because you want to be swinging quickly, not just with a 4-mana 3/3. But it's still a decent enough blocker. Vengeance, but it extends to their family and friends too. 3 and a white, sorcery, destroy any 1-tapped creature, and each creature of the same summon type. I've given this an A+. I think it's one of the best cards in the entire set. The key is you have to make sure when you're killing one of their creatures that your creature won't also get killed, because it kills across the board. As long as you can keep that in mind, so maybe in a controlling deck where you don't have many creatures out, you can kill a tapped creature, and then a lot of the time another creature. Killing 2 creatures for 4 mana? Bust it. The other creatures don't even have to be tapped, you just need to kill 1 tapped creature, and then all of the rest of them. Path of Peace. 3 and a white for a sorcery, destroy any 1 creature. That creature's owner may search their library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. A-. By the time you've got 4 mana and want to kill any 1 creature, you don't really care if they go get a basic. So, this is the 3rd 4 mana really good white removal spell. White's really good at control. Benevolent Daystalker. 3 white for a 2/3 creature Daystalker. When Benevolent Daystalker comes into play, you may force your opponent to choose a creature card in your graveyard. Put that creature into play. Your opponent chooses the creature. This is going to be a 5-mana 2-for-1. Most of the time, you'll be getting back like a 2-drop, let's say on average. The creature itself is worth, well, about 3 mana as we've seen. A 3-mana 2/3 is playable. So this works out to a card that's pretty good. Especially if somehow you can make it so that you only have a 3-drop or a 4-drop in your graveyard. Because your opponent is going to choose whatever the weakest creature is. There are certainly decks where you're going to play this and get back a 1-mana 1/1, and you're going to be pretty unhappy. But when that's the usual failsafe, it's not that bad. Borrowing 100,000 Eastwind. 3 white white for a sorcery. It deals damage to each tapped creature, and each creature with horsemanship deals 100,000 damage, which you might guess is enough to kill every creature. The key here is your opponent has just made an attack. Maybe they've got a good attack in, maybe you take a little bit of damage, and then you just kill all the creatures they attacked with. The creature with horsemanship, as I've mentioned, doesn't apply as often, but sometimes it'll hit one of their creatures in. Obviously, you'll want to play this before you attack on your turn, so that it only kills your opponent's creatures, but a lot of the time this is close to a one-sided board wipe. 5 mana, busted. Again, one of the best cards in the entire cube. Horse of Will. 3 white white for a summon horse. It's a 1/2. You may pay 1 life and remove a white card in your hand from the game instead of paying Horse of Will's casting cost and horsemanship. I've given this a D. It's just not that good, even if you could put it into play for free without having to exile a card. It still wouldn't be stellar. It would be good, of course. But when you have to give up a card from your hand, it just doesn't really do it. You don't want to spend a card just to get a 1/2 horsemanship. Soy Jacapult. 3 white white for creature soldiers. It's a 2/3. On your turn, before you attack, you may tap Soy Jacapult to point at any one tapped creature, destroy that creature. This is repetitive removal. It's really good. Your opponent might not attack into you, which is also good. If they do attack in, you can start, well, killing their stuff. It's also good if you've got any ways to tap their creatures. We saw one earlier. There's not a ton in the set, but if you can get those synergies going on, you'll have a really good time. General Sao. 4 white white for a creature legend. It's a 3/3. Whenever it comes into play or attacks, create a 1/1 orange bird with lifelink, and it has horsemanship. So, this comes in 6 mana, 3/3 horsemanship with a 1/1 lifelink, and for those who don't know, lifelink means whenever it deals damage, it'll gain you that much life. So 6 mana, 3/3, that's hard to block, and a 1/1 with upside. That's on its own a pretty good card. But if you can keep attacking with General Sao, you're going to keep getting 1/1s with lifelink every turn. They're really good blockers. They gain you life. They help you stabilize. This is one of the best win conditions for controlling decks. Obviously, if your opponent kills it, you're not the happiest, but you still end up with a 1/1 orange bird with lifelink. Sima Yi, without 100,000 arrows. 5 and a white for a creature legend. Sima Yi has power equal to 2 plus the number of tapped creatures you control. Its toughness is 4. So what you want to do with Sima is attack with a bunch of creatures. Preferably including Sima, but Sima can also just stay back to block, especially the turn Sima comes down. And, well, if you've got 2 other tapped creatures, it also counts itself. It'll be a 6 mana 5/4. I've given it an A just because white really wants some high end, and this is one of the cards. It might be closer to like an A- or a B+, but I think in the context, white will be really happy with this. Summon the Forebears. It's a 4 white white for a summon human saga. It's a 2/2. When this creature enters, and after your draw step, put a 2/2 white human creature token into play. Sacrifice after the 4th. So it comes in with 2 2/2s, and then your next 3 turns, you get another 2/2. Though on the 4th turn you do get rid of this one. So ultimately it's kind of like 4 2/2s for 6 mana. That's really good in my books, especially if you've got any way to buff the power toughness of your creatures. It's just going to be really annoying for your opponent to attack into, and you're going to get some good attacks of your own. Supreme Verdict. 5 white for a sorcery. Each player chooses 3 permanents to become supreme. Destroy all non-supreme permanents. I've given this an A-. This is one of the hardest cards to really grade, because it really depends on what you've got. This will oftentimes be an Armageddon, so it's going to get rid of all of the lands. So you're just going to be left with your 3 best creatures against your opponent's 3 best creatures. Where this starts shining is when your opponent has fewer than 3 creatures in play. I don't know how often that will happen, but white does have a lot of good removal, so it's certainly not impossible. But if you're at a point where you keep your 3 creatures, and your opponent keeps their 1 and loses most of their lands, well, they're going to have a really hard time rebuilding, and you'll just be able to start attacking. I've given this an A-. I'm not convinced on this one either. I'd have to see it played a few more times to feel really confident. But I think this is a pretty solid early pick. Blue Eyes White Dragon. 6 white for a summon dragon. It's an 8/6. I really like there's a cycle of really big fatties that are all vanilla. I think it's a really fun design decision anytime you've got a cycle that goes throughout all 5 colors. And they're all pretty good. They're all decent high-end. This one in particular, 8 mana is a lot, but it's an 8/6. It eats pretty much everything. It attacks really well, and if you can find any way to give it evasion, you might just kill your opponent in 1 hit. Anyway, that's all the white cards here. Thank you all for watching. Stay tuned next time for when we go over the blue cards. If you had any cards that you saw and you thought, wow, Victor, your opinion sucks on it, whether you think I was too good to a card or too harsh on one, I would love to hear it. I'd love to hear your experiences with the format. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.